Everyone, we're going to go ahead and get going. Thank you for your patience. I now call to order this work session of the Anchorage Assembly regarding candidate interviews for Assembly Seat C. It is Thursday, January 19, 2023. We are scheduled from 1 until 4 p.m. today. It is 1:14. Again, thank you for your patience. Apologies for starting late. We had a meeting that we were finishing up over at City Hall right before this one. We'll go ahead and start with taking roll. Madam Clerk, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Solt. Thank you. Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Sweet.
Present.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Zolotel.
Here.
Mr. Cross.
Here.
Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Voland.
Happy to be here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will go ahead and begin. On January 17, Assemblymember Allard was sworn into her seat in the State House of Representatives, and at that time, her seat on the Assembly became vacant. On January 20, the Assembly passed AR 2022-410, declaring the Seat C, vacant as of January 17, and initiating the process to fill the vacancy of a seat, which is in District 2 and represents Chugiak, Eagle River, and J-Bear by appointment. Applications were accepted by the Municipal Clerk's Office from January 10, 2023 until January 17, 2023, and we are here today to interview the qualified candidates who timely submitted their applications for Seat C in District 2 to represent Chugiak, Eagle River, and J-Bear. All applicants who met the qualifications for Seat C are considered nominees for appointment. This is per AMC 2.70.020B.2. The Assembly is not required to interview all applicants or to ask applicants the same questions. The Assembly is not required to take public testimony at any interview. And an applicant may withdraw their application at any time prior to appointment. This is per AMC 2.70.020B.3. We will proceed with the interviews in the order of the alphabet drawing. The candidates will be given 3 minutes to speak each to address why they applied for appointment to the Assembly, and then the Assembly will ask questions of the candidates. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond. We will rotate through starting with the next candidate in line for each question, allowing each candidate to answer the question, and then starting again with the next candidate in line. Finally, we will end with round-robin style, final or follow-up questions. And then it is my intent to ensure 2 minutes per candidate for a closing statement. And depending how this goes and how much time we take up in the question-answer process, we may have to shorten some things or we may have some extra time. So there's a little bit of flexibility, but the intent is to rotate and to provide the same amount of time to each candidate to respond. And I want to note that the documents for this work session are available online, elections/candidates page, for anyone who wishes to pull those documents up. So then, if we are ready to proceed, I don't see any members in the queue. We will start first with Ms. Dern. I will set the timer, and you will have 3 minutes to let us know why you applied for appointment.
My name is Robin Dern, and I am a resident of Eagle River. I've been a resident of the Chugiak Eagle River area for the past 27 years. I want to begin by thanking Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, and all of the Assembly members for giving me this opportunity. And I want to especially thank Jamie Hines, who's been very helpful in this process. She and those folks down there at the election office, they are heroes for the municipal voters. On the final day that applications were being submitted, I went online to look them over, and I found a breadth of experience there that was impressive and very encouraging. But I did not find a woman within the group. And having been in Eagle River for a long time and having understood the legacy of strong female leaders in that area, and myself having mentors in the area, Susie Gorski, Mary Bram, and Louise Smith, I felt that that was a voice that was missing from the table, and so I made a last-minute decision to apply. I also felt that I wanted to personalize a little bit the message. I wanted to talk about my neighbors and the people that I've come to know, the business owners and the businesses that I go to, and I really wanted to give voice to what I think are the problems of the people that I know, and also what they celebrate and what they love about living in Eagle River. I think I can be a good advocate for them in this interim period, and I also think that I could be a good conduit of information from the Assembly and the executive branch of the city back to the constituents in District 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will move on to Mr. McCarty.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here and your service as coming back from Juneau the past 2 years. And I appreciate all of you for the service that you do for our community and such. The reason I'm throwing my name into doing this is as service for our community, and it's just an ongoing thing. You know, the emphasis in life is what can you do to improve yourself and make your world a better place. And as a business owner in Eagle River, doing that business of mental health services and helping people get off of opiates, as well as different things in their life to make it better so that we don't have people committing suicide or kind of stuck in ugly relationships or whatever. As someone that being part of Eagle River and very involved with Eagle River, former president of the Birchwood Airport Association, doing things there in the Chugiak area of Birchwood, involved in the Birchwood Community Council, Chugiak Community Council, that of building the Lions Park tennis courts, so now we could brag because we have the best tennis pickleball courts in the state. And so come on down and play the game. But we're doing that at a cost because we have a phenomenal community. As you see all these people here, what a phenomenal statement of our community, that doing that at a cost of $75,000 because the community stepped up to do in-kind services and bringing leadership in many different aspects there. Is what can I do to help our community of Eagle River, Chugiak, help our community of Anchorage to be a better place. So that's why I'm throwing my name in to help. Thanks.
Thank you. So I will go to Mr. Myers next, who actually is second on the ballot, but is on the phone. So Mr. Myers, if you would like to go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. As was introduced, my name is Scott Myers. I am running for the Anchorage Assembly District 2, Chugiak, Eagle River, and J-Bear. I'm new to this. I'm not a career politician. I'm a realtor who has made a career out of building and selling the American dream. I want to continue to help people achieve their dreams and help those who call Chugiak and Eagle River home. I'm originally from Oregon. I grew up on a farm where I learned the value of hard work, honesty, integrity, the ability to make a decision, and the value of teamwork. Eagle River has been my home for over a decade. During that time, I've served on the Chugiak Eagle River Chamber of Commerce for the past 8 years, volunteered hundreds of hours at community events such as the Bear Paw Festival, the annual Chamber Dinner Auction, and others. I served as a director and now as the president of the Southport Community Council, and I've served on several other committees and associations. For the municipality, currently I'm serving on the Board of Equalization and the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. Now I'm privileged to be ready to step into a larger role to facilitate a better Alaska for its residents. This is why I decided to run for the Anchorage Assembly. I learned that giving back is essential to success, and as your Assembly member, I will give everything to improve the lives of the residents in our community. I will use my leadership and business skills to bring common sense and balanced budgets to the Anchorage Assembly. With that will come better and more efficient services for the people of Chugiak and Eagle River and Jay Bear. Affordable housing has been an issue I'm passionate about, and as it is becoming increasingly more difficult for lower wage earners to obtain the American dream of home ownership. Some priorities of mine would be focused on common sense solutions for the homelessness issue, working with the administration and with the Assembly. I believe this is a state issue, not just an Anchorage municipality issue, but unfortunately the burden has fallen on the taxpayers of the municipality of Anchorage. I am fiscally conservative, community-focused, and I would be honored to serve in the interim seat until the election in April. I have an experienced Assembly aide who has agreed to work with me to ensure a smooth transition to fill Ms. Allard's seat. I filed a letter of intent to run for her seat in October and plan to continue campaigning for the seat until the April election. I want to thank everybody for their time and consideration today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members of the Anchorage Assembly. My name is Jason Thomas. I'm a resident of Eagle River. I have applied to take the position as an Assembly member to really take my experience and knowledge and insight from an attorney helping the disadvantaged and from assisting other municipal governments in the execution of whatever duties they are executing, be it from a role of legislation and appropriations or more of a government administration goal. I want to really expand upon that and be part of the actual decision making instead of the support and the formulation of the policy. I have currently representing other municipalities and boroughs, mostly off the road system. I do not see that me serving for Anchorage would be a conflict. I have no confidential or privileged information, nor would this prejudice any of my other clients. When I haven't been a municipal attorney, I have been seeking to give help and connect my disadvantaged clients with the services and help that they need through the community and through government agencies. I think that can also help the municipality help to get on track to solve the homeless and the employment problems that some of the disadvantaged citizens have. My goal is to help solve all of Anchorage's problems, not just focus exclusively on Eagle River, but as Eagle River is integrated with all of Anchorage, I would seek to address all of Anchorage's issues. And so thank you again for interviewing me, and I'll conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Isham.
Good afternoon. My name is Art Isham.
And if you could speak up a little bit, sir.
I'm sorry?
It's a little bit hard to hear. If you could.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
All right. My name is Art Isham, and I think I have a lot to offer the Assembly. I've lived in the Eagle River Chugiak area for 40 years. First 19 years were in mile 10.5 Eagle River Valley, and the last 21 I've lived in the Chugiak Birchwood area. I'd also lived on Jay Bear until I moved to Eagle River Valley in 1983. So I am aware of the military community and their requirements. I've been involved with the Eagle River Valley and Chugiak Community Councils. I was president of the Eagle River Valley Council, and I was secretary for the Chugiak Community Council. I have 15 years experience with the municipality on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was chair for my last 3 years on that commission. While there on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I insisted on orderly civil meetings that followed Robert's Rules of Order, because I'm very concerned about the process that leads to whatever decision is made. In regards to the decision, it is actually up to the Assembly or whatever commission is involved to make the decision, and it's binding. And even if I'm in the minority, I will support the decision of the group. I'm currently totally retired, so I do have time to devote to day or night meetings. And looking at the schedule ahead, I'd say that it's important that people have the time. I spent 23 years in the military. I worked for the Arco, Alaska people. I've worked for various Native corporations, and for the last 19 years until I retired in 2019, I worked for the state of Alaska, and 15 of those years were with the Alaska Aerospace Corporation. So I feel as though I have background and experience that would be very useful to the Assembly. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand that Mr. Romig is not here. Okay, we will move on then to Mr. Cruikshank. And
Good afternoon. Is that a little better?
yep.
So I'm a local boy. I was born and raised in Chugiak. I've spent the past 36 years in my community. My community is Anchorage, but specifically in Chugiak Eagle River. I graduated from Chugiak High School. I can safely say that I will spend the rest of my years out in my community. I do love Chugiak Eagle River, and I'm passionate about my community. I'm a blue-collar worker. I'm proud to say that. I've been working for the state of Alaska for the past 14 years. When I got out of high school, I went to work for DOT, traveling across Alaska, working in rural airports, and through challenges and different advancements, I've worked my way up to previously as the building manager of the Palmer State Office building, and currently I'm the facilities manager for the Atwood State Office building. I've seen the value in collective bargaining, and I became active with my public employees union. And to that point of participation, I climbed through, and I'm actually the chairman of Public Employees Local 71. My passion is community involvement, and I just want to reiterate that theme. So I believe in public process and community involvement through community councils. I believe in the community council system. At an early age, I can remember driving to the elementary schools or our town square center to testify of some land use issue. I realized if I want to be part of the solution, I need to be involved. I began participating with Birch Community Council 10 years ago and became an officer 5 years roughly ago. And I'm currently co-chairs with Debbie Osiander for Birchwood Community Council. I believe it's more than just community councils, that if you want to have effective change in the community, and with that, I have other organizations that I am very passionate about. AMAT CAC, that's now the Community Advisory Committee. I'm the current chair of that organization, which is a subcommittee for the TAC, which reports to the Policy Committee. I understand the process of MTP, the TIP, and have successfully advocated for priorities of prioritizing our CIP projects in different ways. I am the acting chair and elected vice chair of the Chugiak Eagle River Road Board. I understand our community projects, the needs, wants, including our CIP projects. I'm the past Federation of Community Councils vice chair. I have an understanding of the community needs and wants. I advocated, I'm running out of time here, I believe I'm a problem solver working together citywide. I want this position because I'm passionate about our community, and I believe I'll do a fantastic job.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Baldwin.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Baldwin. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. I've lived in Eagle River off and on for the last 21 years. The Air Force brought me there first, and then we got back there again in 2008. And then we've decided to stay because we love the area. My wife's a physician in town. We've got our kids in public school there. So I'm a long-term resident, and I'm with volunteer experience up there and a committed public servant. I enjoy working on difficult problems and finding solutions in a collaborative way, whether that's my time as an Air Force colonel or whether that's my stint as the Ravenwood Elementary PTSO president. The thing I enjoy the most there is Eagle River, Chugiak, while it does provide a lot of people working in Anchorage proper, it's a self-contained little area. If I don't want to get on the Glen, I can go enjoy beach lakes and cross-country ski. I can go hike Baldy. I can go to the nature center. It's some of the things that make Eagle River and the Chugiak area very special. My time in the Air Force, I've got lots of time with J-Bear and know the area well. So I feel like I can represent not only Chugiak, Eagle River, but the J-Bear populations. Very aware of a lot of the issues we have between roads and snow, the schools, parks, development, permitting, and the like. These are areas I'd like to be involved in. I know that being an advocate for the district is not a one-way street, as it requires compromise and transparency. So to get things for the district, we have to all work together. So I know to get good collaborative government, there's got to be integrity, there's got to be accountability and transparency. So as I work on things like whether it's affordable housing or bettering the area, developing the business of downtown Eagle River, these are all areas that we've got to do transparently and with accountability. Appreciate the opportunity and your service. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Arlington.
Yes, thank you. I thought we'd have 5 minutes, so I prepared my remarks for that time. You've got a full copy of my prepared remarks that have been handed out to you. I've often heard it said that it's good practice to start a speech with a joke, so here's one that may be pertinent to these interviews. A politician running for office was asked about his policy on liquor. He answered, "If you mean the demon drink that poisons the body, ruins the mind, destroys the family, and creates criminals, then I'm against it. But if you mean the beautiful drink used for a wedding toast, the foundation of a fun Friday night, and the biggest source of tax revenue to fund needy orphans, then I'm for it, and I won't change my mind no matter what you say." But seriously, I am seeking a seat on the Anchorage Assembly to replace the vitriol and unnecessary animosity that existed among some Assembly members that hampered reasonable debate to find common ground, to craft solutions, to make our community a safe and enjoyable place to live. I have years of success on community boards, reaching consensus and finding common ground to meet their goals and objectives, and I can do the same as a member of the Anchorage Assembly. My wife and I have lived in Eagle River for 40 years, where we raised 2 children. We now have 3 grandchildren who live here, and we want to see grow up in a safe and thriving community. We have personally experienced property crime, and I am aware of too many other instances that have likewise gone unpunished. The crime statistics that I've laid out in the handout to you illustrate the dire situation. Anchorage has one of the highest overall crime rates in the U.S. and is 46% higher than the overall crime rate in Alaska. For comparison, the national total crime rate is 2,489 incidents for every 100,000 people. Adjusted for population, Anchorage's annual crime rate is 5,506 incidents for every 100,000 people based on 2019 crime data. I am seeking a seat on the Anchorage Assembly to make Anchorage safe again. I have the experience, education, and years of community service to bring to the Anchorage Assembly to achieve that goal, to make Anchorage safe again. My bachelor's degree in communications and political science and master's degree in public administration equipped me to cut through the bitter diatribe the community has seen during meetings and focus on solutions that are beneficial to all concerned. I've given you a short list of my experience serving as chair of the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals, president of Eaglewood Homeowners Association, working as assistant city manager after I got my law degree, a member of the school board here in Anchorage, founding member of Eagle River Presbyterian Church, coach for a number of soccer teams, Connect Little League, baseball, basketball, swimming, diving judge, and board member on AK Child and Family. As you can see, my family, my community ties, and passion for public service runs deep and across a broad spectrum of public interests. I think I'm your best choice for this selection. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Sistek.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly. I am honored to be here and to be considered for the interim appointment to fill the seat vacated by Ms. Howlard. I've been a resident of Anchorage since 2001. During this time, I've lived in a duplex down the street from Diamond High School, in an apartment near downtown, in a home near the airport, and now I live in the Eagle River with my family in a house we own. Actually, we're still making payments on it. The bank owns most of it. During my time in Anchorage, I've also lived in my truck on the streets of Anchorage to save money on rent. Although my situation was vastly different than the plight of the majority of the homeless in our city, I believe this experience does provide me with unique insight into the homelessness within our city, especially when it comes to the hopes and desires of those facing a night in the cold. My wife and I appreciate living in Eagle River and appreciate that our community is safe enough that we are comfortable letting our older children, ages 9 through 11, take outings on their own to Jitters or the local grocery stores to buy treats with their allowances. We feel these experiences give them a taste of freedom and the responsibility, which in turn helps prepare them for being responsible citizens when they are adults. They have this opportunity only because of the community in which we live. Since coming to Anchorage, I have worked for a local telephone company in their internet service department and have been a small business owner providing contracting services for maintaining office networks and for software development. Though working in the tech industry would not on the face appear to be a good preparation for public service, I believe many of the challenges that I have faced in my career and the resulting skills I have developed by overcoming these challenges would be beneficial to fulfilling the responsibilities of a member of the Assembly. As an example, and based on my experience, engineers in the tech industry tend to be very intelligent, extremely knowledgeable, have strong opinions, and always right, despite two or more of them often having opposing views on the proper solution or a correct solution. Developing an acceptable solution which meets the requirements of the stakeholders often requires quickly learning new complex technologies and concepts, admitting the limits of your own knowledge, seeking the input of subject matter experts, and working through ego-filled and sometimes heated debates with highly intelligent individuals. I feel that in my 22 years in this field, I have become proficient at working with others to develop solutions to complex issues. I would hope that my coworkers would agree with my assessment that I am willing to work with others to find workable solutions which are acceptable to most people involved, though this may just be my ego speaking. Given the short amount of time that I would have on the Assembly, I hope to bring the skills I have learned over the years in facilitating groups of individuals with different temperaments and sometimes of contentious relationships to join together in solving problems as a group, as well as bring my ability to quickly learn about new issues Sorry. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I see we are joined by Mr. Romig. If you would like to take 3 minutes to provide a statement as to why you have applied for the position to serve on the Assembly, you can go ahead and do that now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gerald Romig, and the experience that I bring is after serving 28 years in the United States Air Force throughout the world, I served in the capacity of being a community planner in a lot of foreign environments. so that I can quickly come into a place, figure out all the constraints and all the assets that are available to come up with plausible alternatives for solving problems. And as far as education, I have a master's degree in human resource management and development, so I'm used to dealing with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, going into organizations and figuring out problems they're having and coming up with more efficient ways to do things. And that goes all the way back to my bachelor's degree in industrial technology, where you come into a situation and find better ways of doing things. As far as actual work experience, I also think I bring a unique perspective in that I've served in a lot of foreign countries and seen a lot of things that were done that here in the United States aren't transferred, and I find that amazing. One for instance is when I was stationed in Panama. On base, there was 3-story buildings, sort of like you have on J-Bear, but on the 3rd floor of those buildings, there was a group of people called the Kun Indians that lived up there, and through preferential contract procedures, they were given all the service contracts for the entire base, the custodial, the trash removal, that type of thing. And they were very minimally disruptive to the actual operations. So when I look at like the homeless situation, I kind of wonder, I mean, I realize we have drug and alcohol issues involved also, so it's not quite so clear cut, but I kind of wonder if the McKinley Act isn't being kind of skipped over in the process. Because I see buildings on base being tore down all the time, and they check the little block, has the McKinley Act been taken into consideration? And I would say that the true answer to that is no. So I think there needs to be a little bit more scrutiny there. I mean, just last summer I watched a 3-story dormitory get tore down. In their opinion, it may have needed money to be repaired, but any kind of a solution you come up with is going to take money. And I think they're just being overly protective. And that's the kind of things where I can help to think out of the box. That's where I'd conclude.
Thank you. So we will move on to questions from Assembly members, and I'll go through the queue. I had initially said 60 minutes. I'll set the timer for 90 seconds, so it'll be a 60 to 90 second response. And we will start with Mr. Myers first for this round, and then we'll go to Mr. McCarty and down the line. And then for the next round of questions after that, we'll start with Mr. McCarty and go down the line and come back to Ms. Dern. Mr. Myers, we'll go ahead with the first question. It will be from Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for applying. I think it's so awkward to have an interview with this many people staring at you and in public and recorded, and it's just the nature of how we work, but I'm sorry for that, and thank you all for applying and for taking the time to be here. We really do appreciate it, and I think we have a lot of good folks here, and I'm excited to have one of you, well, instead of who we had before. But anyway, to more positive things, could you all, just by show of hands, you don't actually need to go down the line, but if you are planning to run for this seat permanently in the April election, planning to file for it, could you please put your hand up? And I know that, Mr. Myers, you're on the phone, but I know that you already said you are running for the seat. We have a practice of not selecting someone who is currently running for the seat. It's not in code, but it is our practice. And from my perspective, the reason is that it's incredibly difficult to balance sometimes a full-time job. Some of you might not have that, and that's fine too. But to balance that along with a campaign, which is very time-consuming, and trying to learn, which is a pretty steep learning curve, how to be an assembly member for a really short time. So my preference is to not select someone who is running for the full term. So with that said, could you put up your hand if you are running for the term, the full seat? Okay, so just Matt and Scott. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. So, Mr. Myers, a question will be coming from Mr. Cross. Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, neighbors. I guess we'll start with Scott. What would you recognize is the single greatest concern or your greatest concern for our district?
Thank you, Kevin, for the question. The single greatest concern, I think we had the ability to work with one another. I think that there was an issue in the past, and there was a level of discourse between the assembly members, and I hope that we can balance that out and learn to work well together. And if we don't all agree, that in the future we can at least come to some sort of compromise while having respect for one another. I think that we as the assembly as a body as a whole should work to further benefit everybody in Anchorage, Chugiak, Eagle River, and Jay Bear included in that. So I'm hoping that a fresh perspective can bring that. Other issues, snow removal has been a huge issue. Chugiak and Eagle River doesn't have the homeless issue that Anchorage does, but like I said earlier, that's an issue. I think it's a state issue, and unfortunately the municipality of Anchorage gets burdened with that. So anyways, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So we'll move down the line. Next will be Mr. McCarty to answer the question.
Thank you. Through the chair, I concur with what Scott Myers said about statesmanship and working together and trying to work out the problem. In Juneau, I have a stone etching from Thailand of an elephant. And maybe you've heard the story of the six blind men and the elephant, but it basically a prince from India was given an elephant as a gift. He had six friends that had never experienced an elephant before, and they go out to experience an elephant, and they have different experiences of this elephant from different parts of it. And they're arguing about what this elephant's about when they only understood it, the tail like a rope, or the trunk like a snake. And all of us have a different perspective of this thing, this elephant of Alaska, elephant of Anchorage, elephant of Eagle River, Chugiak, Jay Bear. And when we come together and say, well, that's an interesting perspective, I want to try to understand your perspective of this thing. I think we could accomplish a lot more. Another thing is that I think that we need to keep our finger on the pulse of our community. That means we need to be in the community and know what the people of the community are experiencing, and by that we could be better leaders. If we're not doing that, we don't know what the pulse is, and we're making erroneous decisions. And by the way, those people are looking at the elephant too. And so what's their perspective of that? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas? And the mic isn't, thank you.
Some of the problems or issues I think I would like to address would be affordable housing. While Eagle River isn't the only only neighborhood who's experiencing expensive housing, I would also want to look into facilitating business growth in Eagle River. There is potential for business expansion and getting more businesses to come to Eagle River, and that would bring more tax base and more community influx from just Anchorage into Eagle River instead of just Eagle River going into Anchorage to do business. And also, while I don't know all of the information from what I have heard from the news, I do have some concern about the snowplow money and how that's being spent with contract modifications. Contracts for snow plowing for Eagle River then being modified to include the Anchorage Bowl area is very concerning to me, and so I would make sure that I see that any money to serve Eagle River is spent in Eagle River.
Next is Mr. Isham.
Problems that I see coming up in Eagle River, we have a organization called Eagle Exit, and I'm very concerned about where they're coming from and the facts that they utilize to say why they feel as though we should again form a separate community like we tried back in the early 70s, I believe. I'm also concerned about the funding that possibly could be diverted from our roads funding that we tax ourselves for, and it's very important that this is reimbursed to us as far as this snow clearing that's involved in the greater Anchorage area rather than in Eagle River. So those are two areas I'm concerned about.
Thank you, and I just want to encourage folks to speak up. I think it was a little bit hard to hear you there in part, Mr. Isham. Next is Mr. Romig on the question from Mr. Cross. Actually, is that on?
You got it? Okay. My response is that I'm not quite so territorial, because I think, quite honestly, the problems of our neighbors are our problems. And what I mean by that is our families work in the main parts of Anchorage too. So my wife happens to work at Fred Meyer at Northern Lights, gets a gun pulled on her at work, by a customer. The fact that we live in Eagle River doesn't exempt us to the problems of our neighbors. And so I think we have to not quite be so territorial, because that's all of our issues. The homeless, that's all of our issue. When you can't use the Sullivan for the purpose that it's built, that affects all of us, and takes away from our community esprit de corps. So I'd be trying to spend my time and attention on focusing on the problems that affect the community as a whole.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
So what I love about the Assembly is it's nonpartisan. So we don't have groups that are bound together. There is the ability for one area has maybe a particular issue, and they can work with another Assembly member that can create collaboration to resolve that issue. So with the question of what would be our number one issue facing Eagle River right now, I believe collaboration with fellow Assembly members to work towards common projects. To advocate for our own projects is going to come Chugiak Eagle River working with Anchorage to advance their projects. They're one and the same. Now, if I was going to say a specific item that I would like to see, again, dream sheeting here, probably MTP criteria. There was a drastic change. I think our first complete streets project was 98 out of 216, and our first non-motorized project was 175 out of 211. So it would be nice to maybe correct some little dispositions, but I'm also realistic that that might not happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Yes. So could run through any number of things that probably everybody's talked about, whether it's affordable housing and economic development of downtown, and Holton Hills going farther south there. The theme there is it's common problems for all of us. So really, I think, given the limited time that I would have in this position, it's just establishing the tone of collaboration and making sure the communication is happening. As Mr. Isham referenced, Eagle Exit is out there. That periodically pops up. But I think the numbers say we're all better together. And so what I would like to see is better collaboration, cooperation, and communication from north to south because, as referenced, we all have very similar problems. A lot of the folks that live in Eagle River, Chugiak, work in Anchorage, like they're not separate. We can't be separate, at least not functionally. So we're better off together. So how do we sell that and make sure that we get everybody on the same page? That's what I would see as the problem and what I would try to go after. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
I think we're all on the same page here. I'll use a quote that I used when I was debating. I think it was Ben Franklin that said, if we don't hang together, we shall all hang separately. So I think that that's the theme that's going on here. As I indicated in my initial remarks, I think the number one issue throughout the municipality is crime. Adjusted for population, our annual crime rate is 5,506 incidents for every 100,000 people. And despite accounting for a smaller than average share of total offenses, property crime is much more prevalent in Anchorage than it is nationwide, further demonstrating the seriousness of the issue. As I indicated before, my wife and I have been a victim of that. I don't know what is driving that crime rate. That's something I think that I'd like to get pursued. I don't know if it's because of the drug issue. One other issue I think that we need to address in Eagle River is more after school activities for the kids. I'd like to see the Assembly looking at funding more facilities like Boys and Girls Clubs and getting the kids active from 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock. That's the most dangerous time for the idle hands.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
Eagle River is much more varied than Anchorage in that we don't have an urban area in Eagle River. We have more suburban rural areas. And as such, I believe that a lot of at least my friends and neighbors in Eagle River feel that we're dominated by Anchorage and Anchorage priorities. And so the biggest issue I see for my friends and neighbors in Eagle River is not having a non-contentious voice on the Assembly that can bring their issues to the forefront and represent them without causing ruffled feathers and stalemates.
Thank you. So for this next question, we will start with, thank you, Mr. Salt. My apologies, Ms. Dern. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. At the risk of repeating everybody here, and actually, to be quite honest with you, it's wonderful to hear that we all have kind of the same root goals here, because it means that we are all keeping our eye on the idea of cooperation and collaboration, and I think that is important. My work with the Anti-Defamation League, I currently sit on their regional board, has given me a lot of experience in having conversations and really understanding how to listen. I have spent a great deal of time over the past few years in my study, become facilitator of several of their programs, really striving to hear what other people say without judgment and to consolidating opinions into forward motion and into solutions based governance. So I would hope to bring that to the table if I were appointed. I suppose that in terms of all of the bigger issues, there are many of them, and I can't speak to just one. Clearly, homelessness is it's a passion of mine to end it, and I'm sure that is true of everybody here in this room. And I believe that we can do that. I think that everybody from north to south wants solutions there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So for this next question, we will start with Mr. McCarty and go down the line. And this question will be from Mr. Voland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think the wide pool of candidates really speaks to the level of civic engagement and community service in District 2, Birchwood, Chugiak, Eagle River. I want to ask about transportation and infrastructure because that's a passion of mine. I do serve on the AMATS Policy Committee. And it is very important to be realistic when it comes to AMAPs. My question is, what kind of transportation or infrastructure projects would you like to see go forward, either in your district or in Anchorage more broadly?
Thank you. Through the chair, share that passion. Our businesses cannot operate unless they. Our people cannot go down the streets unless the streets are available to go down. Coming here, it was sad to see someone walking down the street because there was no sidewalk for them to go down because there's too much snow. And that's a safety issue. It's also an issue of integrity for our people. And so a month ago, I was in Whitehorse, and I was talking to the Minister of Economics, and our theme was transportation. It's like, how can we move goods? They're trying to move goods out of Whitehorse or the Yukon down to Skagway, and hopefully they could do that. How can we move goods? And in the case of the earthquake, I was getting a hip replaced in Costa Rica the day after the earthquake happened. No, day before the earthquake happened. And my number one question when I called was, how's the airport at Birchwood? Because if the bridges are down, that's our only way to help the people there. Is the airport good and such? So we really need to be focused on economic purposes for transportation, taking care of our people so they could get down the roads. In the cases, Eagle River, we could have a certain bridge affected that shuts down the Glen Highway freeway. And so what are our alternative type pieces there, looking at rail as well as other means? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Thomas.
Having a very few roads go through a community and having incidents and accidents shut them down is a very acute concern for me and is an acute problem for the community, but a more chronic problem that I would seek to address is the Port of Alaska. Anchorage is basically the gateway to the north and gateway to the state. About 90%, 90 or so percent of the state's population gets goods from the Port of Alaska. If we don't make sure that the port and the airport are adequately funded or and are in good working condition, the cost is going to have to be passed on to the consumer through payment to fix it up outside of grants, outside of winning the $360 million lawsuit for mismanagement that's, I believe, up on appeal. The port is where Alaska gets its goods in and out and how commerce takes place in Alaska. I would focus a lot of my time into making sure that Alaska is open for business, Anchorage is open for business, and adequately managing the port's condition would be something that I would seek to do while Assembly member if I'm appointed.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Isham.
The transportation infrastructure in Alaska is still developing, and specifically in Anchorage, I think our concern should be bus service, not only in the Eagle River Chugiak area, but for downtown. There's a lot of people that lower income that need to move by bus, and if the buses aren't there, they're not going to get to work, and that's going to impact lots of things. Additionally, I agree with the snow removal requirements on the main roads, and we have to get that Port of Anchorage repaired so it can function.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I would kind of revert to some of my original comments where I was discussing the McKinley Act, which is, when planners propose to demolish facilities, one of the things they're supposed to consider is whether that facility can be used for homeless shelters and things like that. And you know, if you're going to propose that be scrutinized a little bit better and everything, you're going to have to consider transportation. And right now, the transportation system onto J-Bear, and everybody talks about Eagle River, Chugiak, but you know, J-Bear is part of this district, and the public transportation system there is lacking. So even if you were to pursue trying to use them facilities for other things, you'd have to have the transportation to support it. The next part of that would be, you know, I was part of the effort to move Coolis to J-Bear, which left, you know, a core number of facilities sitting over there that the state has not been able to repurpose, you know. So you know, I would look at that from the homeless perspective, and again, you'd have to improve the transportation to that area to support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we talk about housing, and I think a key to housing is having smooth transportation routes to affordable housing. And so the project that I think is needed but is also very delicate is Seward to Glen connectivity. But that's a delicate project that requires a lot of mitigation for many of the communities that the connectivity represents. But I think with being the priority of housing, I think that's actually a direct connect right there and would benefit the community, would have benefits community-wide. As far as local projects, what I like to see, Artillery Road interchange. I know that there was a Pell that was moving on that, but I believe it was canceled. So I would like to see a finished design study for Chugiak Eagle River, and something that can finish up and tie into the new Artillery Road interchange locally. Thank you.
So from a transportation perspective, it's been alluded to a couple times, snow removal, but specifically, you know, as you're struggling with getting down to one lane, and then you're looking at our poor pedestrians that are struggling over snow. Love to see focus on that. That's just a basic livability thing, but on a bigger scale that maybe taps into economic development. Between the port and the potential opportunities for the air freight coming in through Anchorage and then utilizing the port to get that out, I know that there are opportunities there. So as we look at federal infrastructure funds and continue work on the port, keeping our eyes on those abilities to expand not just the livability for us, but from an economic development standpoint, finding those opportunities to expand. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Thank you. I would support a lot of what has already been said. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned that I was aware of a number of years ago was the Anchorage Railroad looking at light rail going from Anchorage to Wasilla, the valley, and I think that that's very feasible to be looking at, and something that I don't know why we haven't been pursuing that. I think that's something that would take a lot of the pressure off the Glen Highway. The other project that I was aware of was Connect Bridge. That I think has been dead in the water, no pun intended, for a number of years. But likewise, if we can get traffic off a certain portion of the Glen Highway, that's going to make things easier for those of us in Eagle River. And then finally, increasing the number of people mover buses and the frequency, likewise, I think is going to help the transportation issue and take the congestion off the Glen Highway.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
With the short amount of time I would have on the assembly, I wouldn't have a lot of time to spend, or much time to spend on trying to do any large infrastructure. But something that I don't think would require much money, if any, and would be beneficial to our community is improve the quality of the service of our bus runs. 10 years ago, I had to use the bus. We were a single car family, so often I had to take the bus to go to work. The bus's schedules would be anywhere between 10, or the bus would show up 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after the posted time. And that's really hard when you're trying to get to work on time, or you miss the bus because you showed up 5 minutes early instead of 10 minutes early and you missed the bus and you have to wait another hour. You're now late for work. I know the bus systems can be run on time. I've visited Seattle multiple times where I didn't use taxis. I used the public bus system, and they ran like clockwork, so you could almost set your clock to the buses arriving at the bus stops. So for transportation, I would say something that could help achieve would be to improve the quality of our bus routes in that making sure that they actually show up on time, so that way people who are trying to get to their jobs are able to do so without having to spend an extra hour or spend 20 minutes extra at the bus stop waiting for that bus to show up because the bus schedule is so finicky.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
I'd like to add on to that even just the simple act of making sure that the bus schedules that are at each stop are legible, because right now they're not. In fact, when it's icy out, you can't even see anything that's there. We have a great example of what can work over at Providence Hospital in UAA, and also at Muldoon across from Fred Meyer. There's no reason that we have to reinvent the wheel. We can just try and maybe make sure that every bus stop is modeled after some of those that work better than others. And along these lines, in Eagle River in particular, we have a bigger problem because we have a further way to go. And so people, it's just unreasonable to think that they might be able to make their way to a job downtown or in South Anchorage, not knowing how long it's going to take for them to get there. Standing out in the cold and on sidewalks that haven't been cleared, and really not having anyone to reach to ask that question of. So I think that those are problems we can address. In addition, in Eagle River in particular, I find that we have a problem with transportation to when people are being released from the prison there. It is an unfortunate reality. You come across people walking down that street after having just been released in all different types of weather, and I think we do need to look at that. On a larger scale, I want to say I'm really proud of Eagle River for having the second electric vehicle charging station there at Three Bears. It's a great example of private and public partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. And to conclude this round, Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard a lot of folks discussing the transportation issue, and I agree with that. I think one of the things that wasn't really touched on was infrastructure, and that is part of addressing the affordable housing issue would be to increase roads, water, and sewer. So working, I don't know the avenue of that, but working with AWWU to increase sewer and water lines. I know that there could be a big project north of Eagle River in Powder, just north of Powder Ridge there, a Clutna land that's owned, but it has to extend the sewer line. I think that would help with our housing affordability issues to increase basically the housing number of units. The Port of Alaska is obviously a big concern because that's where we get the majority of our goods and services, so I think that should be on top of everybody's list. And then, as Matt mentioned, the artillery road interchange is quite a bottleneck in Eagle River, and would like to see that improved someday for some local issue.
Thank you. So for this next round, we'll start with Mr. Thomas, and the question will be from Mr. Solt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first, like everyone said, appreciate you applying and that great turnout from Eagle River, Chugiak, at Clutna. Sorry. So my question, one of the challenges that the municipality is facing, I know from Girdwood to Anchorage and maybe out your direction, is homelessness. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on how we move forward in that space and improve the lives of the homeless that we currently have in the municipality.
One of my friends owns a small business in Anchorage, and he took a risk and hired one guy that had come into the shop and ordered a lot, would shop there, and he was homeless. However, with the lack of adequate sheltering throughout the city, That employee had a lot of barriers to get to work because during the summer there was no housing services. It was just camp out in Centennial. And so he had to make his way from a campground all the way into town to try and get a job and make money for himself. And he was on track to get himself out of homelessness, even without a coordinated program or plan for him to get other housing, other social benefits, things like that. I have spent my time as a public defender trying to do that for Anchorage disadvantaged people, but I've also seen what can happen when people try their hardest, but they aren't given the comprehensive help that they need. So I would work hard to make sure that we are appropriating enough money or appropriating an adequate plan so that people are able to get the social services they need and to get jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Isham.
As far as homelessness is concerned, it seems to me that's one of our major concerns at this present time, especially with the weather. I believe that we need to support and push the housing first idea, because once a person gets into a safe environment where they're not struggling as much as they were, the opportunity is there for employment, perhaps recovery from any sort of addictions that they may have. And the key to that, I think, is a low barrier assistance situation. And we seem to insist on shooting ourselves in the foot as far as money is concerned for these things by looking at what has happened with the navigation center that was going to be out there near the police main area. That thing's stalled. We've got a potential lawsuit on our hands, and it seems to me we've wasted money. So we need to figure out how to be smart on spending our money to deal with homelessness.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Yes, I started with talking about my different perspective. I and my wife both grew up in housing projects, you know, so in essence low-income housing, and we had to do drastic things to break that cycle, and that's why I look at things a little differently. But yet today I live in Eagle River. My home's paid for. I buy my cars in cash. You know, no debt-free, ready to retire. You know, any day now. But my point being, I've kind of talked about the homelessness thing throughout this, and I think by moving the homeless into the Sullivan Center was a brilliant idea, because now it impacted the middle class and the upper class, and now it's a real issue, versus having them spread out and not being so visible. I think we got to do two things. You know, you either build a housing project, you know, rather than a high-rise, which proves when you get into a high-rise situation, then you have the proximity issue, and you have discipline type problems. So I say you build a housing project, or you do what I've suggested throughout, and that is you collaborate with the federal government, who has the resources, and figure out how to make that McKinley Act work in the city's favor. You know? So.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
Thank you. So I am not a technical expert, and so I figured better to touch on my decision-making process when it comes to homelessness. So I believe in research, and research has carried me through everything, and both research from technical experts and research from constituents. And so I will completely acknowledge that we don't have a major Anchorage as a whole, but out in my area, so we sometimes have a disconnect right to it, and I'm acknowledging that the constituents a lot of times that we really need to be speaking to are the ones that are most affected in Anchorage right here. And based off of that input from technical experts and individuals that are experiencing it right there, I would hope that we could work forward with a holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Thanks. This is not a topic that I necessarily have a lot of firsthand experience with outside of volunteering, previously Beans Cafe, et cetera. But from looking at the problem set, and I know we've been spinning our wheels on it, and it's been a source of a lot of consternation between the administration and the Assembly. But the Navigation Center on 3rd Avenue that's just opening is a good start from a small scale piece, co-locating services and getting people pointed in the right direction. Ultimately, a homelessness problem without co-located services and shelter availability, that part's a good first step, but tackling affordable housing and getting people into long-term answers and making that something they can achieve is something that has to be the goal. So continuing to look at the multi-steps that are involved with first getting somebody low barrier safe, providing some services, get them on their feet, and then get them pointed in a direction that can be affordable. So creating the conditions that allow that, whether it's permitting, private-public partnerships to continue that seems to be the right answer for us. We just have to do it, as a team. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
It seems to me that once the census was done, I know the municipality spent quite a bit of time and money locating and interviewing those that were homeless. And from what I've read, I mean, the reasons for the being homeless are varied, as we've already heard. So if it comes down to drug abuse, mental illness, I think there are different facilities we need to be looking at for individuals with those types of afflictions. I don't necessarily think that we create homes like tiny homes, taking containers that have been configured into homes. If you do just a Google search of containers that have been configured into housing facilities, there's lots of examples of what can be done with that at a relatively minor expense. So those are options that I think that we should be looking at, and putting individuals that need training for new skills, jobs, skills, et cetera, put them in a separate area, again, where we've got transportation going directly to those facilities that get them to the workforce area where they can then be employed. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I have.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
Homelessness has been a problem in Anchorage since I arrived. It's been a part of my recollection of downtown and midtown since the first time I visited here. It's not something I'm going to solve in 90 days. But what I would like to help do is mend the working relationship between the executive branch, the mayor's office, and the assembly, so that way the assembly is able to freely ask the heads of the departments of Anchorage what resources they need to help address it, what supports they need, and help them provide the assembly with a map forward, since they're the ones that deal with, the APD, the Community Service Patrol. They're the ones that deal with the homelessness on a day-to-day endeavor.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
Homelessness and food insecurity in particular are huge problems that face us, and they actually do face residents of Eagle River just as they do in Anchorage. I volunteered for some time with the Eagle River Food Pantry, and there are other outfits out there who also provide food assistance, and I can tell you that many of our clients were what I would consider to be home insecure, and that can come in many different ways. So when you think of homelessness, a lot of people think of people sitting on a street, but it's also people that are living in a couch or in a truck or in in a van, and I think that we need to be able to address it all. I think a lot of it stems more so not from drug and alcohol abuse, although that is a huge problem that needs to be addressed. It stems from living wage issues. It stems from not having any savings. It stems from not being able to afford affordable housing. There are all sorts of issues, and the Anchorage Museum did an incredible presentation on homelessness, and I would definitely want to revisit what I learned there in order to inform me and to learn from all of you, if I were appointed, as to what efforts have been made to date. I think that we are neighbors, and that this is not an issue that's one neighborhood or another. It's to our best benefit to take care of all people, and I think that we need to keep an eye on this problem because it is a priority. So.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
All right, thank you. This is a tough topic in 90 seconds. I think we need to look at the etiology of homelessness. I think there's 8 different reasons for people being homeless, and some of them are people want to leave Anchorage and go back to their village, and they are not allowed to go back to their village. We have probation officers, people on probation, that are not allowed to leave Anchorage because of probation. There's no PO. We don't have a VPSO or something like that situation in the village for them to return to. Of course, we talked about housing. It used to be that a quarter of your paycheck went to housing. Now it's half to 2/3. So we're creating all sorts of different things. Are we addressing those issues rather than one cookie cutter type thing fits this? We have this huge elephant with different parts. A huge component I see is not just providing 3 hots in the cot, but to give purpose. And so to give jobs, an opportunity for people to get to their jobs, but some of those jobs may be outside where they're doing like a sloper type thing. What kind of things, like for instance, transportation. And we have so many people that are in homeless situations where they want to work, but now we could avail type of things that we increase our transportation opportunities locally and in the state. So again, we need to look at this as a system thing, and it's not just Anchorage, it's all over the world. And people throughout the world are looking at it systemically. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Thomas, we had started with you. I just want to make sure everyone had the opportunity to answer. So we have Mr. Myers next to conclude this round.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, homelessness has become a national issue. And I agree with what Mr. McCarty said. And what I said in my opening statements, Anchorage has been burdened with this for a state issue. I wish that the legislators that live in Anchorage would try to address this at a state level as well to provide some relief for the residents of Anchorage, as we're the ones being burdened with it. Recovery, employment, housing first options, all good. But we need to look at the root cause. I mean, the mental illness issue, the drug and alcohol abuse issue. The Sullivan is a good temporary solution, but I think the Golden Lion would be a better option. Same with the Navigation Center. I think what we ultimately need to look at, though, is what's causing these issues and why it's chronic. So I would rely on the expertise of those of you who've been working on it for quite some time and your input, and then work with the administration to see what we can facilitate and move this in a positive direction.
Thank you. So for this next round, we will start with Mr. Isham, and the question will be from Ms. Zelatel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for being here. It's really good to hear your answers to these questions. We've hit on most of the pressing issues facing the city and the municipality. I'm going to go in a little different direction. We have quite a few very urgent issues facing the municipality. If you've cracked open or read online the daily news, there are some serious concerns about what's happening in government. So my question to you is, what do you believe the Assembly's role is in the oversight of government operations, and what is the Assembly's role in the balance of power within municipal government? And I know you only have 90 seconds, so I know that's a lot to ask.
Thank you for the question. I really think what you're saying is what is the role of the Assembly versus the administration? And as I see it, the Assembly makes the policies. They provide funding to accomplish those policies, whatever they may be. And then they provide oversight on the execution of those policies. The job of the administration is to execute those the policies and the details of the policies quickly and efficiently. Now, maybe that quickly and efficiently is where we get a little wrapped around the axle. Those result in disagreements. And how do you deal with disagreements between the Assembly and the administration? Generally, you try to negotiate them. If that doesn't work, approved with a vote subject to veto or veto override. And as a very last resort, I see disagreements being resolved through the court system. That again, very last result. So I would say that oversight, funding, and actual creation of the policies is the Assembly's role, and the administration needs to execute.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Yeah, I see that issue slightly different in that when you start talking policy, you know, I think there's no problem with the Assembly guiding the administration in the formation of policy, but I see the policy thing as being more of an executive branch type of thing. And I see your role as a checks and balances, and to make sure that, you know, the authority isn't exceeded, of course, and of course you have the budgetary control to help in that process, you know. So that's the way I see it a little bit differently. Yeah.
I'll make it real short and sweet. I believe the Assembly in this particular example would be oversight of the executive branch that rules are being followed.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
I'll go with this one. So, I mean, the basics of civics being that we've got a legislative and an executive. The power of the purse and holding lots of hearings, coming up with policies and building a budget obviously lives here with the Assembly. The administration we would hope would be collaborating with the Assembly so that what shows up in the end is something that maybe not everybody's perfectly happy with, as all good compromise normally is. Nobody's exactly getting what they want, but ideally working with both sides to come up with the right policies, the right budget, so that then the executive, the administration moves out and executes. So the oversight function obviously exists because the power of the purse means that the budget that gets approved, there's got to be some accountability on how that gets spent. There's rules in place, and following the rules are important, or else you end up pretty dysfunctional. So that's, hopefully we get back to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Anchorage has a strong mayor form of government, so I agree with what's already been indicated, that the Assembly is in some instances somewhat hamstrung with its limitations on oversight and with the budget. The mayor is subject to the voters, essentially. I think the administration can maybe assist the voters in reviewing the performance of the mayor by suggesting hearings when there have been suggestions of malfeasance or misfeasance. I think it's important for the Assembly in its oversight capacity to bring that to the attention of the electorate and allow the electorate opportunities to do what needs to be done. And you know, if it comes to recall, then that's, I think, up to the electorate to make that decision.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
I believe that the Assembly is the physical embodiment of us, the voters' consent to be governed. Your job is to come up with the ordinances by which we all agree to live by and to disperse through the power of the purse the funds that are collected from us to better our community and to help the disadvantaged among us. I see the executive branch in the mayor's office as being a co-equal branch of the government. That is not necessarily, the mayor's job is not necessarily to implement the policy of the Assembly, because he himself had to run on his own policies to get elected by the electorate. But I do see the Assembly I do see the Assembly being our immediate interface of the governed to the executive, the oversight, to make sure that he's not straying outside the bounds of the law, engaging in improprieties, and fulfilling the promises that were made to the electorate. So I would see, to answer the question, I'd see the balance of power of being about equal, with both of them able to swing a sledgehammer both ways.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
Yes, I see the Assembly's role as legislative, obviously, and I see the executive branch as managerial. I think that transparency is all parts. I think that it's very important that everybody in the constituent base understands what is going on, how decisions are being made, and I feel it is very important to have open lines of communication at all time so that you can avoid problems like this as they come. And I think that building good relationships within both branches, both ways, is important so that when problems do arise, you have a strong relational foundation to be able to build upon. In terms of how I feel the Assembly has to deal with issues such as the ones that they're being faced with most recently through allegations, I think that the Assembly members need to take it very seriously. By the way, the clock is not ticking, so I have no idea how much time I've taken or how much time I've left. I'll just keep going.
Just go ahead and, why don't you go ahead and wrap up? I'm sorry.
I can talk. So I do feel that the people of Anchorage do need to know that if there is malfeasance, someone is going to be responsible for investigating, and there need to be consequences. And I think that the Assembly should think of that before there are problems and not after. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
All right, thank you. Through the chair, we have a wonderful system in our society of checks and balances. And so as the Assembly of setting policy and budgeting and things like that we are not micromanaging. And we ask the executive branch to fulfill the things that we, the Assembly, pass. If there's things of great disregard, we have foundational issues like our charter here to say this is a guidelines that exists, and if someone is, or a group of entities is not doing what the Assembly seems that is asked to do, then to have task force meetings to take a look at that, committee meetings to take a look in depth to those type things. But we have to be careful that we don't micromanage because someone calls something tomato and we call it tomato. And the things that are going on currently, I share concerns too as well. But I don't know the rest of the elephant, and I'd like to understand some components to that, as I'm sure you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Myers and then Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The short answer to the question for Ms. Zalatel is yes. I think the legislative branch is responsible for the oversight of the executive branch, and if there's something going on, then an investigation needs to take place to determine the outcome and determine what has happened. And as Mr. McCarty just alluded, there are two sides to every story, so I would like to hear what's really happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may take a different stance than many other candidates. I have done investigations for governments myself. Granted, they were generally for the administration of the government and not for a legislative or appropriation purpose. However, I do believe that the Assembly does have its inherent authority to do investigations and to seek in-depth information on how the government is functioning, especially into contracts and other issues which are within its purview. In addition to me pushing for the Assembly to conduct its own investigation for a legislative purpose, I would also look into code changes for more disclosures for non-contract bidding and other changes such as to prohibit what has been alleged as serial no-bid contracting just under the limit of notification of the Assembly. But as I've said all this, and I have done these investigations in the past, I do want to state that I would defer to Assembly Counsel for all legal matters, and that he is the legal representative of the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes that round for the question. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Romig first, and the question will be from Mr. Sweet.
So I'm going to steal one of the questions that was asked when I was in your guys' seats, which is, can you speak on your thoughts on civility? There's obviously been a lot of attention paid to sort of the unrest and uncivil nature of some of the meetings these past couple of years, and I would like to know the candidates' thoughts on those matters. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I do think that's a big problem, and I think the general public is kind of tired of seeing some of that. The lack of decorum or the lack of respect for each other. Sometimes even the terminology that's used. We hire or elect people to represent us, and we want them to be as professional as possible. And that goes for more than just here within the city. That goes for all government and all representative type systems. It's okay to disagree. In fact, I'm one that really relishes disagreement, because I think you come up with some of your best solutions that way. But it should never become personal, and it should never become hidden agendas. So we're here to serve the people. And when we stop doing that, then we're doing a disservice.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
So I wish I could claim this one. There's actually another individual on the committee that recently was talking about this, and it really struck home, but statesmanship. And I think there's just a level of professionalism, and I think we're all going to hear relatively the same themes right there. Is it's okay to disagree with somebody, but having it in a way that you can have discussion and come to consensus to move forward the will of the body, I think, is the ultimate goal. So I really I embrace that thought, and I think no matter how things turn out, I think the Assembly is going to have a much different level of teamwork, statesmanship moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
So step one is agreeing that we're all here for the good of the municipality. We all want what's best for Anchorage and the greater municipality of Anchorage. And so once you do that, and you know that we're all trying to pull in the same direction, we're all on the same team, it makes it very important. You know you've got to get along. You may not agree, whether it's as a former fighter pilot in a debrief where we are brutally honest with one another, but afterwards we're going to go and have a beverage and talk things out, and everybody's good, because we know we want everybody involved wants what's best for the team. So if you look at it as a team and nothing's personal, and you keep it at that level, and you keep it focused on what's for the good of the order, then ultimately I think you end up with a productive environment where we may not see eye to eye, but I can respect and understand where someone's coming from, and we'll find that meet in the middle. And ultimately, probably nobody's perfectly happy because we had to compromise, but that's the way this works. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Well, I can't disagree with what's been said already. I think as far as my own personality and characteristics are concerned, I think humor is a great tool, if you will. And if you're able to laugh at yourself and you're able to point out in a humorous way how others may have missed a point and may want to look at a different point of view, I think is very beneficial. That's one of the tools I've used to help bring consensus in a number of community organizations where I've been a member. So again, consensus building, trying to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, understand where they're coming from, what their values and positions are, and hopefully help them see what your values and positions are and the constituents of those that you're representing, as well as theirs.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
I believe that civility and respect of your peers is exceedingly important. If you don't show visible respect to your peers, it makes it much harder for them to provide you the benefit of the doubt that you really are working in good faith. It also, showing disrespect for people makes you more likely to make decisions based off of gut reactions or emotional concerns rather than using your rational, logical thinking. All of you have a diverse amount of skill sets. Mr. Sweet, being a regent at the university and working at the cemetery, has vastly different experiences than myself do working for a telecommunications company. He probably has better public speaking skills as well. But we each bring a different set of skill sets and experiences that would be of value in solving complex problems that are very multifaceted, especially problems like the homelessness. So civility and respect is very crucial to make it so you can have a working relationship between your peers and between the branches of government.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
The Education League, which I work with, has some incredible training on this for both local and state and also for federal government agencies. And so I would hope that regardless of what happens here today, that this body might take advantage of some of that opportunity. With regard to civility, one of the key pieces of learning that I had when I was going through facilitation training was make sure that the people around you know where your hot button issue is so that they can tag in for you, so that you feel like you do not need to be the only one in the room that is perhaps defending something. Unfortunately, we've seen in these chambers racist and anti-Semitic comments, and this is inexcusable, frankly. However, you are charged with listening to the public, and we need to be able to hear what people have to say. I think that if the group acts as a group and acts together, then you will be able to have the common knowledge of where we might have reaction foment. So if I were on the assembly, I would want to get to know each of you well enough to know where I might be able to help, and when you feel that you've hit a limit, so that we could have civil discussion right here within these chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dern, and I'll go to Mr. Myers and then Mr. McCarty. Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it's an excellent question by Mr. Sweet. Civility is an issue, and I think it's something that someone referenced this earlier, the general public is tired of. There needs to be a level of respect and decorum for both sides, for the legislative branch, for the executive branch, and for one another. I'm not sure where it went away at some point, but it seems the golden rule has seemed to have gone away from politics in general. I think everybody needs to remember that and be humbled by that and treat everyone the way you would truly like to be treated. So that being said, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
Thank you. Through the chair, civility is very important. We are statesmen. We represent our community not just in this room, but outside of this room and outside this community here into the world. And what are we doing to say that we're listening to one another rather than being polarized in our presentations or discussions, which only increases polarization. There's a statement, no one likes to eat crow. And it's just a statement that no one wants to be in a situation where they feel defensive, feel not validated, that they're feeling heard. We have a great representative of our state who just passed away. And Don Young would say to several of us, I remember him saying it to me, that we've lost statesmanship in this state where I may say to you in the midst of maybe a brief at ease, saying, okay, Mr. Rivera, we are fishing at 5 o'clock, right? Because we're getting to know one another. For me, I'm O positive blood. I like to donate blood. If there's opportunity later on today, I'll do that because I'm happy to give my blood to you if you need it. And we need to get back to that. We are human beings sharing this place together, and how are we doing it in a civil manner? Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second here while I try to adjust this clock. Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Yes, so the Assembly is only a equal co-branch of government when it functions as a body, and civility and following procedures are all part of effective functioning and working together as a body. So they are really essential to being a contributing member of the Assembly, and I understand that and would follow all the rules and be civil to fellow Assembly members, the chair, but also be civil to the public. I would hope that if I was appointed that the populace would hold me to a higher standard, and I would try and reach that higher standard. And when we lose civility, we lose the role model aspect that public servants can be for young children and others who would seek to serve their communities. If they see someone who isn't civil, who is being confrontational with other constituents, they may think that serving their community that way may not be for them, or that they just don't have any good role models at all. And I would hope to be a good role model through civility to all of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
Madam Chair, I'm not so concerned about civility between the Assembly members, because you're a team, you all have a purpose of doing what's best for us. What I get concerned about is the individuals that give testimony that get out of hand, which tends to upset everybody. I feel as though we need to disrupt the disruptor on those individuals that do get out of hand, and I think a way to do it is tell them to bless your heart, just keep exercising your First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you. So for this next question, we'll start with Mr. Cruikshank, and the question will be from Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first, I just want to echo a lot of the comments from my colleagues and really appreciate everyone's interest in civic involvement. Overall, I think this has been a really insightful process, and I have gleaned a lot of really good information from the discussion so far. So my question is, at the end of your, it's going to be roughly 3 months on this body, when you look back, what will you be able to say about your time on this body? What will you have accomplished? If you have something specific, I would like to know that. Otherwise, general comments, that would be great. Thanks.
Being realistic, collaboration is the biggest thing that I would like to accomplish. Whomever assumes the role of representation of our community, I would like to redefine the roles that have been set in the past years, because I acknowledge that, again, the path forward for Anchorage and for the path forward for Chugiak Eagle River all involves teamwork and working together. So I echo that same thing I love about the Assembly, of the ability to work with any one member of the Assembly to accomplish overall benefit for our community. So when I look back, I would like to see a different level of relationship for whomever assumes that seat.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
So it's been the theme. I'll say the collaboration word again. So given the 95 days that there would be, just establishing the right tone going forward. There's likely to be oversight things going on in the next 95 days. So good open communication between this body and the administration will be good, helpful. Holton Hills would be another one that's in the near term to hopefully craft the right form of affordable housing for Girdwood, as a for instance. But as it sits for this particular seat, I think it's just establishing the right kind of environment as a collaborative body to get after good governance for the municipality. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking back, I think as everyone said, and as I said in my opening statement, you know, what I would be looking back on is the fact that I've replaced what I had viewed as some of the vitriol and animosity that existed here previously. And really what I'm looking forward to is getting to know each of you as a member of the Assembly, and at the end of that term, being able to call you friends and have you call me a friend. Know what your positions are, and hopefully I'll have something to add in the way of suggested solutions like transportation, homelessness, etc. I look forward to being an active working member of the Assembly, and hopefully at the end of that term you can look back and say that yes, I added some value and was a contributing member to the Assembly.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
I'd like to be able to use my experience working with engineers, salespeople, product managers to bring together a common vision to work with the cooperation, to improve the cooperation between the executive branch and the Assembly. I have lots of experience working with diverse groups of people, like from salespeople to managers to engineers, all of who have very strong opinions, sometimes at conflict with each other, but we somehow have always in the past managed through cooperation to come to an end solution. My second goal, if I were to be appointed to the Assembly, would be to assist Assemblyman Sweet in his campaign to prohibit facial recognition technology by the municipality, and perhaps expand his scope to also include reviewing the use of license plate scanning technology by APD.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
Much of my career has been spent in fostering youth leadership. And I have to tell you, one of the other things that inspired me to come here today was Mr. Sweet's testimony as he was being considered for this position. Assemblymember Sweet he represents a voice of a generation that I think is largely absent in government. And having recently taken part in a lot of the Arctic Encounters events and meeting a lot of the leaders within the Arctic Youth Network, I can tell you we have some dynamic young leaders out there, and I hope that being here today, even though this might be a little bit of out of my comfort zone, will inspire other people that aren't normally drawn toward this type of work to consider it. And on a personal level, I would like for my children to both understand their civic responsibility, and by setting an example, by sitting here today in front of you, I hope that I inspire them. Maybe on a larger level, I hope to be an emissary at the time that this is through, to take every opportunity to learn about the work of the Assembly and the governance of Anchorage and how it relates to the state, and then go out there and be able to be a vocal advocate for everything that's done here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Myers?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the question, Mr. Rivera. I hope at the end of 90 days to not be finished and continue working with you guys. So that would be step one. But step two would say to echo what some of the other folks have said, work with the body as a whole in a positive direction while representing the constituents of Chugiak and Eagle River and trying to do what they want and what they want of their assembly person. So I think it's important to work again together with the executive branch and with the legislative branch, all while showing respect to one another. I think that's most important. So I'll keep it short and sweet since I can't see the timer and I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
Thank you. I think in 3 months, first of all, to represent the community of the District 2, to make sure that they're being heard, as well as whatever the special interest type things that's out there of need is there. Second is, in 3 months, we're looking at June. And that means the economy, maybe there's no snow by that time, and things are going to be happening. And how are we helping our businesses grow and the economy grow? And I know that's a long issue, but we need to help our local businesses and in all those different ways. And the third is that of out-of-the-box thinking and dealing with things. As I mentioned to you earlier, that building the tennis courts at Lions Park, Lions Park is a unique thing. And I tell you just briefly, the reason I got involved with that is because of Rotary. We were trying to do something with Schroeder Park, the 2 tennis courts there. And we could do it for $5,000. I'm a tennis player, won a lot of tournaments. And yet Parks and Rec said, no, it's going to cost $60,000, give us the $5,000, and then we'll do it. We didn't give them the $5,000. I went to Lions, and we did the park for $75,000, which ASD did their courts at Bartlett for $460,000. 4 courts, but far more price there, so we could do things differently. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
If I'm appointed, my goal is I'm going to seek out the neglected people, the neglected issues and neglected projects, and try and solve them. Even if I'm not able to solve them during my short time here, I will at least have brought them to light, and someone else can carry on what I've brought forward and solve it in the longer term. One of the, and some of these things could be if businesses come to me and they say there's something that needs to be addressed in the code or some other way that I can help them grow their business in Anchorage that hadn't been addressed before. I will listen to that and work with them and try and bring this neglected hindrance up and fix that. One of the first things I would do is appropriate money to the food bank under AMC. I think it's 770. The state has failed in feeding the food insecure. People are waiting months for food stamps, and they're not getting it. I want Anchorage not to fail when the state or other organizations fail. So I would try and make sure that at least everyone's fed, and with June and the summer coming up, I'd also want to make sure that we do something for the homeless also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
The 4 things that I would like to concentrate on in the 90 days: come up with an interim solution for homelessness to get us through the winter, because we still haven't solved that problem completely yet. Deal in whatever way we deal with the Dombrowski allegations. Handle the Holton Hill decision down in Girdwood. I have a certain amount of understanding with people that are separate from the municipality. And finally, lobby the state for school funding. I know we're not the school board, but we can sure lobby for additional pupil funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Thank you. So, what interested me was that it appears like this is a kind of a crucial time in the history of the city. We have a lot of major issues going on at once, and I thought that by sharing some of my experience and my specialty, that I could help to get the best decisions. I don't expect in 90 days that long-term solutions are going to come about, but I'd like to contribute to that and possibly provide something that other people hadn't thought of because of my unique background and my unique experience. So that's what it comes down to, and I'd be honored. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, before I move on to a second round of questions from members, I want to be mindful of time. It's 3:10, and preferably we would wrap up about 3:45, 3:50 today, so we would have a few minutes before we move into the special meeting. I want to ensure we have about 20 minutes for closing comments, 2 minutes for each of you. And so before I move to Mr. Voland for a second question, I'm going to jump in with a yes or no question. And first off, thanks to all of you. Thank you for your willingness to serve and your involvement in the community. I very much appreciate that you are all here today and have expressed interest in this position. So on the Assembly, we have a lot of meetings. We have 4 meetings scheduled for the next 6 days. Actually, well, 5 if you count the one that starts at 4 p.m., but 4 that the person appointed to the position would need to attend. And so I'm going to ask just a show of hands, and then Mr. Myers on the phone, you can just say yes if you can attend these 4 meetings. So there would be a meeting tonight, Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m., a meeting Friday, 3 to 5 p.m., a meeting Monday that starts at 5, that could go till midnight, and then a meeting Tuesday that starts at 5 that could go to midnight. And could I just have a show of hands for yes if you can attend all 4 of those meetings? So everyone can. And Mr. Myers, are you able to attend those meetings?
I am able to attend as long as I can do it. I'll be back in Anchorage on first thing Monday morning I fly in. So I can attend via phone or Zoom or Teams, whichever it is.
Okay. There are other meetings such as work sessions, Friday from 10 to 12:50, 10 a.m. to 12:50 p.m., also 1 to 2 p.m. Monday there's orientation, 10:30 a.m. to noon for the new member, also 4 to 4:30 p.m. orientation, and then orientation on Wednesday 11 to 3 as well, and then work sessions on Friday the 27th. And I understand that there are times when folks have to dial in, but for the most part, show of hands, can you make 90% of those work sessions, meetings? And Mr. Myers, is your schedule free enough to be able to attend those work sessions and trainings as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And then with that, I will go to Mr. Volland for the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Baldwin. Go ahead, Mr. Volland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I'm so impressed by all the answers that we've heard here today, and I think we have a really good group. I've been debating whether or not I should ask this next question, but I'm going to because as a member of the medical community, it's very important to me. Our former colleague, whose seat you are seeking to fill, has been viewed by some in the community as having an antagonistic relationship with the medical community here in Anchorage during her tenure on this body. I'd like you to provide your personal perspective on the efforts of the medical and healthcare community here in Anchorage during the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. As I alluded to in my opening, my wife's a physician, primarily at Providence. She's a hospitalist. So the pandemic was near and dear to our hearts as it kicked off, and we went to separate spaces so that she could do her thing in the hospital, and I kept the kids away so that we were all trying to be as safe as possible. And then we got things back to, what ended up being COVID normal. But I've got personal friends that are infectious disease docs, pretty good friends with a lot of the medical community in town. So from that perspective, I would think I would be drastically different from the previous person, since I've got some inside baseball on the goings-on of that and the needs to come line up and try to testify when it came to talking about public health policy in this forum. I know what they were facing and the kind of backlash that people faced. So definitely sensitive to it, and certainly appreciate all the efforts that went on during that as we lived it firsthand. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Mr. Volan, can you clarify exactly what it is that you're wanting to have addressed?
Sure, Jim, thanks. If you could just speak broadly to your personal perspective of the efforts of the medical and healthcare community during the pandemic.
I couldn't understand that. I'm sorry. My personal perspective of
the efforts of the medical and healthcare community during the pandemic.
It's still muffled to me. I guess generally I would defer to the experts in the medical community, whoever the recommendations would come from the state health director, the municipal health personnel. I don't think that it's appropriate for the assembly to be putting their personal positions regarding medical treatment as part of public policy. Did that answer the question?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
Working with technology, you learn very quickly that you don't know everything, and you have to rely on what we call subject matter experts. When it would come to public policy regarding health, I would have to rely very heavily on the input of people whose job it is to practice the field of medicine. So in regards to how they handled, how I perceived the medical community during the pandemic is, I would say that they were doing the best they could with the limited knowledge they had during a rapidly evolving situation over the 2-year course.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
Well, my daughter's leaving for college tomorrow, and she's making a stop at my father's and my mother's. And my father from cancer right now. He's in treatment, and so I'm wearing this mask out of an abundance of caution, and that comes from me taking the advice of every medical professional that's out there, and I have a great respect for the people that put their lives on the line during the COVID epidemic. Obviously, I agree, we need to listen to people that have more knowledge than us. We cannot be subject matter experts in everything, and so I think it's very important for us to seek the advice as Assembly members of people who are subject matter experts. So I would very much welcome and encourage that kind of input, and I would certainly listen to the advice of people that know better than me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, it's back to this antagonistic. I agree. I think we need to have a positive relationship with everybody in the community. I think that goes back to decorum and showing respect to your fellow assembly members, the executive branch, and then community members as a whole. I think the medical community did a great job, given they were working through something that nobody's experienced before. And again, I'm not an expert in the medical field, so I would rely on what the experts say and suggest to do, and take their recommendation and their recommended advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
Thank you. This COVID was a bizarre time, and it still kind of is. I was in Shanghai on Thanksgiving Day 2019 as I was flying from Cambodia, busy airport through Shanghai. The airport was dead. We were the only people in the airport. And then arriving into LAX, busy airport, SeaTac busy, Anchorage busy. What was going on in Shanghai? China wasn't telling us what was going on, but COVID was already happening. And then we had people getting COVID in that time period we didn't know it existed. So doctors were having an experience with something. They said, well, you just have the flu, and yet they didn't know. National Academy of Sciences, the whole scientific method is just kind of a challenge. I stated on the House floor, the bottom line is nobody should die. And so I was very concerned about, are we negating certain things that might keep that prime directive from happening? Now, I strongly support our medical community, and I believe all the medical community should be heard in that process there, because definitely that was a bizarre time having COVID, and hopefully we won't experience a pandemic like that, but that's where things were at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Madam Chair and members, I make my decisions based on information I get from the appropriate experts. And the experts that I would listen to use evidence-based research and that have come to a conclusion based on actual evidence and not conjecture. And the medical community did so much research and worked really hard to tackle a constantly changing medical situation with COVID. They did the best they could. The decisions I made were based on the medical experts, and if something happened again, I would still follow the medical experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
Madam Chair, at my age, you tend to trust the medical experts, and I do.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Yeah, I think it was a very tough situation, and you had people, of course, who were concerned about the economic impact, along with the health and welfare of the people. So it was a conflict that was unavoidable, so to speak. I mean, I respect Jamie for standing up for what she believed. As to whether that's in line with what other people think, well, sometimes you have to stand alone. And I don't know whether the death numbers and everything else bore out all the desperate measures that were taken. I almost don't have an opinion completely, and I definitely won't denounce what her stance was. At the same time, you know, I wore a mask and I stayed away from people, and what I hated to see though was sometimes where certain entities seem to be punished more than others. So where we lost a lot of economic quality of life type things here in Anchorage, when maybe that wasn't needed to go to that extent. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
In generality, I defer to medical experts. Thank you.
Thank you. For this next question, we will start with Mr. Arlington. I'm going to shorten the time. Mr. Rivera tells me he has a yes or no question. Go ahead, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a question that was asked at the last round of this that we had for East Anchorage. And so this is a raise your hand question, I guess, for Mr. Myers, verbalize yes or no. So we are a body that runs on a mixture of tradition and Robert's Rules of Order. So, which can be pretty messy sometimes, but it works most of the time. So what is your familiarity with Robert's Rules of Order? And I guess I don't want, are you familiar with Robert's Rules of Order? Hands up, yes. And then I guess.
Yes, Mr. Rivera.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Cross?
Yeah, just a real quick question, and it doesn't take 3 minutes. What's your community council, and when was the last time you attended one of your meetings?
And we'll start with Mr. Arlington. Probably should take less than a minute, but I'll put it for a minute.
Oh boy, it's hard to recall. It's been a number of years since I've attended the community council meetings out in Eagle River, so I couldn't give you an exact number.
I have to plead ignorance to what my community council is, and I have not attended a community council in Eagle River.
It's been very hard to attend any sort of meeting like that. I haven't attended, but I have read minutes, and I do talk to other people that attend.
Birchwood Community Council just recently. There's Chugach and Eagle River Community Council. I have not attended the community councils in the valley area of Eagle River, but the last one was, I believe, last Thursday, and I had a patient at the time, so I couldn't go to that, which I was concerned about something that involves that there at Highland and Yosemite Drive.
Thank you. Mr. Myers?
My community council is South Fork. I'm currently the president. So I was at the last meeting, that January 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
I have not attended my local community council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
I last attended Chugach Community Council about 2 years ago.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
I usually attend the Air National Guard town meetings, town hall meetings. So that's the closest I come to going to a council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
Birchwood Community Council is my community council. I co-chair, so I attend it regularly, and I've been attending it for, I was actually just thinking, I'll try to be quick right here. The last time I applied for an interim seat, I was on the board of Birchwood right there, so I think it's been, I want to say, 7 years I've been attending Birchwood. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
I've never attended in person. My awareness comes from online digging around.
Thank you. This next question will be from Mr. Peterson, and we will start with Mr. Sistek. Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being a member of the Anchorage Assembly is a form of public service. And so I'm wondering if you could give me a little bit of a definition or tell me why public service is important to you. Thank you.
I believe that public service is a civic responsibility that we all have, whether it's working in our communities, well, I guess it wouldn't be public service, but working in as volunteer in our religious communities, working in our schools, or working with our neighbors. Why it's important to me is it's hard to complain about any dysfunction I see in local government without offering a solution or offering myself to help ease those solutions. It's easy to criticize other people, but it's harder to step up and say, I'm going to help be that change, be that difference to make things better. So I would say that's why I see it as important to try to apply for this position.
Thank you. Ms. Dern?
I think that it is a privilege to serve, and I think that everybody should have the opportunity to have that privilege. Sometimes it comes through volunteering episodically at nonprofits, and if you have the time in your schedule like I do right now, sometimes it comes in the form of giving a prolonged period of time to governance. I do think it's important that everybody feel that they are contributing. I had a mentor once who told me that everyone has to feel like they own it, and even if they give only a short amount of time, that amount of time will connect them to their community, and that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To answer Mr. Peterson's question, public service was drilled into me in my real estate career early on. My first broker was very instrumental in that, saying that we needed to give back to our industry and to the community, and that would make you a successful real estate broker, if you will. And so I've volunteered for the Chugiak Eagle River Chamber of Commerce. I've sat on their board for the past 8 years, and various other organizations. So I think this is just one more step in that direction. Serving the public's interest and the constituents of Eagle River and Chugiak.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
Thank you. Through the chair, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I believe, like I said earlier, that what are you doing to improve yourself and make your world a better place? If you're my neighbor, my tradition is to give away pies to my neighbors at Thanksgiving time. And I give away about 14 pies over the span of a quarter of a mile, something like that. And starts with our little niche of our neighborhood of serving one another. You know, it's not just this here, but at all aspects that we are all to serve and help one another. And some people have the ability to do things like this because their time availability allots for that. But in all situations, and I shared this with a constituent just recently, they said, well, it's just a job. I go, no, for me, it's not a job. It's my service to my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Community service is when, defined by me, is when I or someone uses their abilities that they have to further or help others instead of using those abilities to further themselves. I believe that every person has certain abilities and specialties, and that they can be best used to help other people. With different abilities comes different ways to serve your neighbor. I've worked in government here and there, and so I have some ability to serve my community through government, but I also try and volunteer with other organizations that can use my labor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
I think you can volunteer to serve on boards and commissions, get involved in road cleanup in the spring, help with community events that you're able to provide some sort of expertise or material for, organize neighborhoods to do certain things. Years ago, I got a hold of NSTAR, and we managed to get natural gas extended all the way to the end of Eagle River Valley so people could quit burning wood and coal. So those are the types of things that I think community service is.
Thank you. Mr. Romig? Oh, microphone.
It tricked me. Okay. I believe the term you used was public service. And of course, I had mentioned that I did a little over 28 years in the Air Force, which meant I spent a lot of time away from my family. So, I mean, that's one of the purest forms of public service that you can have. Since that time, I moved here 21 years ago. I retired, and I've worked for the state of Alaska, where I go out to remote sites all the time and doing projects. But even during my time in the Air Force, no matter where I was at, I was involved in my community. I was recognized by the mayor of Tacoma for doing repair work and building playgrounds at homeless shelters. I also constructed, led the efforts to construct a 6,000 square foot greenhouse at a handicap farm where they use that food to sustain themselves. You know, no matter what country I was in, no matter, you know, I was doing those things.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
So my definition would be active participation in our community to advocate for common interest issues. And you could take common to many definitions, but the real definition I'm using is to separate from personal interest and knowing that line of you're advocating for, it's not about yourself or the things that you might want personally, it's the group that you are representing. And I think that's a very important distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Community is a team sport, and public service is a requirement for a good, thriving community. So I was an Air Force brat. I was a Boy Scout. Been in the Air Force for nearly 28 years. Service is near and dear to me, whether that's PTSO president or as a adopt a family at Christmas time for the United Methodist Church of Chugiak, or as a youth instructor for skiing. All those things are important because it gives back, and because it is a big, we're all one team. So I think it's important to find that that stuff that drives you and that you're passionate about, and I am passionate about public service.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Peterson, thank you for the question and the coin of phrase. That's what this is all about, Charlie Brown. Community service, to me, is doing what I can with my talents and skills to make the community a better place for all. It's one of the reasons I'm a member of my Rotary Club, Anchorage East Rotary, where its motto is service above self. And I've been a member since 1983. I spearheaded the creation of the mobile food pantry for the Food Bank of Alaska in 2006, which is still providing food for needy families throughout Anchorage, during which I also volunteer on a monthly basis. So that's what community service means to me.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all. I don't have any other members in the queue, and it is about 3:36. I'll just pause if members have any yes or no questions. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on to a 2-minute closing statement.
I have not a yes or no question, but it's an either or. Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dog people raise their hands.
You can be neither, guys. It's okay. Don't feel the pressure.
Cat people?
Dog.
Both? So we are back to starting with Ms. Dern we've gone and so for the closing statement, it'll be 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
This experience has been extremely instructive and actually very enjoyable. I've appreciated getting to know a little bit about the process and learning more about the people sitting here with me. I think that you have a hard choice ahead of you because there are some really impressive people here. So I feel confident that Eagle River will have an excellent representative of their needs come later on today. I feel strongly that civic duty and civic service is something that is a task of all of ours. And so to sit here and be able to just say that I threw my hat in the race is, I think, extremely important to me, to my family, and to my community to know that there are people willing to do this. And I appreciate all of the work that you do. I would say that there are some real issues that face this body, both in the short term of when I would serve and then longer term. I will be spending so much of my time getting to understand those issues better, not reinventing the wheel and taking advice from people, long-time career staffers and those serving on the assembly and experts in the fields that we are faced with having to find solutions for, and I will be taking advice and doing my research. I think that you have to take this job so incredibly seriously because there are so many people's lives at stake, really, and I plan to do that. I plan to help make people enjoy better lives here in Anchorage. That is my hope.
Thank you. We'll move to Mr. Myers on the phone for a 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all the Assembly members for taking the time today, along with everybody else who threw their hat in the ring. I do want to echo what Ms. Dern said. This is a very important role, and I'm glad to see so many people have stepped forward and are taking it so seriously. I would like to, I guess, change the discourse of where we've been and go to a positive direction for everybody working collaboratively and together in the future. As well as with the executive branch. So I think that's important. I would like the opportunity to serve in the interim position, and then again running in April, and would like the confidence of the folks of Eagle River and of Chugiak to know that they have representation that listens to them and hears their concerns and takes those to the Assembly and to the executive branch. So, like I said, appreciate everybody's time today. In the interest of that, I'll keep it short. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McCarty?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all Assembly members. Thanks for allowing us all to be here. I think we are at a crucial, pivotal point in the state, and definitely in the largest village in the state. And our economy is in a challenging position. In fact, I heard some information that maybe Anchorage is not one of the best places for people to come here for business. And we need to turn that around. And what are ways in the infrastructure now and long-term down the road to improve that so that we get businesses coming here, which means it's going to bring jobs. It's going to mean people feel security, that they have money for housing, that they have all these different pieces that makes this a stable area. Otherwise, people will leave. And that's not what we're about. And we need to change that. I'm very concerned about poverty and opportunity. We run a task force, Mr. Rivera and I, regarding that, and to assess what's going on that brings about this poverty, but also what is taken away from opportunity. And if I'm selected to be on the Assembly, I'm eager to help work through that process. Another piece is thinking outside the box of the challenge, looking at the problem and not personifying the problem. I think that we've seen that in the past where individuals will polarize or personify the problem and not address the primary issue that's going on. And so I'd like to bring that to let's be creative to solve these problems there and thinking outside the box. As an example, LA, when the port was down, I said to the port here in Anchorage, hey, let's bring those ships here and truck them down to the 48. That wasn't considered, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable Assembly members. I'm here applying for the interim position to take my public service to a different level. I am not the most qualified in certain circumstances, but I really strive to find out to whom should I talk to and where should I look to find more answers. I've had experience in groups that have tried to tackle many different issues that governments face. I would like to be a part of the decision-making process firsthand this time. There are a lot of problems that I hope that I will set up for success and to be solved by the time that my term would be up if I am appointed. I just want to thank you again for interviewing me and other very qualified candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Isham?
Madam Chair, I come from a business and science-oriented background. I seek positive, lawful, and measurable or trackable solutions. I do not, excuse me, I do not like to get sidetracked by partisan and ideological distractions because they tend to lead us down rabbit holes. Our job on the Assembly is to fill potholes, plow snow, provide public safety, support the business community, and support our constituents in their pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And this is what I intend to do in my 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Romig?
Yes. Thank you for your time and attention today. I saw this as a rare opportunity. In leaving this, whether I'm chosen or not, I do feel far more comfortable than I did in the start of this to see such well-qualified people willing to step up. So that alone is a reward for me. And whether I'm chosen or not, you know, I threw some things out there. It has nothing to do with whether any of you at any time could come to me and say, hey, can you expound on this? You know, I do genuinely have the best wishes for the community at heart, and I don't have to be the person chosen to share my knowledge and experience with you. So that's what I would say. I did hear one very interesting thing, though, about attracting new business to the Anchorage area. And I think that's somewhat of a unforeseen problem that we are having. I mentioned the facilities that the Coolest Air National Guard base that's connected to the Ted Stevens Airport. You know, there's over 100,000 square foot of space over there that hasn't been used in 12 years. The state hasn't been able to attract any business to move into that, you know. Is that something that the city would have a use for, or could collaborate with the state to entice some kind of business there to help with the local economy and provide better services, or again, the homeless issue, you know? I would leave you with that thought. So.
Thank you. Mr. Cruikshank?
So I did have to add one thing to items that I would like to advance in our community. And I would like to advance the cemetery. I think we're on the edge. We might not see the end results right there, but I think that's a huge project that would benefit our community. But I come back to, I'm a local boy. I'm a blue-collar worker. I believe in public process and community involvement through community councils. And what I didn't get to previously is I'm a problem solver. I believe in working together, community-wide, citywide, so we can all benefit. So as it was previously stated, Chugiak Eagle River has its own unique characteristics and desires, and through experience, I have recognized relationships count. It is with these relationships that allow us to become problem solvers so we can all benefit. I am a community leader of Chugiak Eagle River and would not be in the position I am today if I did not embrace these relationships to get our work done. I'm a local boy, I'm a blue-collar worker, I believe in public process and community involvement through community councils. I'm a problem solver. I believe in working together community-wide, city-wide, so we can all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Thanks for the opportunity to come talk to everybody here today. This is all new to me. Most of my experience has been in the Air Force, DoD level, some local things with volunteerism and in the schools. But I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to work in the community problems, the local problems that we've discussed throughout today. It's been fun to see that a lot of people, we got 10 of us here that are all seemingly saying similar things about wanting to work together, so that's kind of cool, and it's also made it interesting to find new and creative ways to say the same thing in some ways. I haven't thrown any Ricky Bobby quotes out there, so I'll not get started now, but I appreciate the opportunity, and if chosen, would be looking forward to work hard and learn and work collaboratively and transparently to tackle problems for the next 95 days. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Arlington?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Assembly members. I really appreciate your deliberative process and the insightful questions that you've provided to each of us. As I indicated at the beginning of my remarks, I like to use humor to kind of diffuse situations. So I've got one question for you. You know why fish are so political? They're always taking debate. So I was expecting one of these questions to come up as well. How do you define political correctness? Carefully. By the way, I won first place in the political correctness quiz contest, but to be fair, so did everyone else. So seriously though, as I said before, you know, I've lived in the Eagle River community for 40 years, and I've given you a copy of the list of experiences that I've had while living in the Eagle River community, and volunteering and serving on a number of different boards and helping out with the youth and other activities in Eagle River to, again, make the community a better place for all. So while I acknowledge that there are several other professionally qualified candidates applying to fill for this vacancy on the Assembly, I respectfully submit that I am your best choice to fill the current vacancy on the Anchorage Assembly representing Eagle River. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Sistek?
So through these proceedings, listening to the answers of my fellow candidates, I've been watching also the Assembly as they ask the questions and listen to the answers. And some of the answers, it was very clear, the individual Assembly members did not agree with the answers. And so I asked, not on my behalf, but on my district's behalf, that when you evaluate each of us, you evaluate us not as your representative, but as someone who best represents our district. Despite maybe that representative or that candidate pursuing against tradition the permanent seat or not seeing eye to eye on every issue that you also that you have. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I appreciate and I'm an honor that you allowed us to be here.
Thank you. And thank you again to all of you. It is a hard choice, and we are very fortunate that it's a hard choice. I think that that says a lot about our community. So with that, we will go ahead and adjourn to reconvene back here in about 9 minutes. And again, thank you all for your participation and your willingness to serve and all the good work you do for our community. We are adjourned.